It's a Saturday morning. You're at a stoplight, and right next to you pulls up a brand new truck. Gleaming paint, lifted suspension, chrome rims catching the sun. The driver looks relaxed, comfortable, like life is going exactly the way it's supposed to. And something happens in your brain. Not jealousy exactly, more like a question. A quiet little voice that says, "Why not me?" So you do what millions of people do every single weekend. You drive to the dealership, just to look, just to see what's out there. And the salesperson is friendly. The showroom smells like new leather and possibility. And before you know it, you're sitting in the driver's seat of a 2026 truck that costs $65,000. And they say the magic words. It's only $812 a month. Only. That word only is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because here's what nobody in that dealership is going to tell you. That truck isn't just expensive, it is mathematically, psychologically, and financially one of the most destructive purchases you can make in 2026. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why, and it has nothing to do with whether you can make the monthly payment. Here's the belief most people walk around with. If I can afford the monthly payment, I can afford the thing. This idea is everywhere. It's how people buy houses, furniture, phones, vacations, and yes, trucks. We've been trained to think in monthly payments instead of total cost, and that's not an accident. That's a business model. Car dealerships, banks, and finance companies don't make money when you pay cash. They make money when you borrow. So the entire system, the advertising, the showroom experience, the friendly finance manager with his little calculator, all of it is engineered to get you focused on one number, that monthly payment. Because the monthly payment feels manageable. $800 sounds like a gym membership compared to $65,000. Your brain relaxes. The decision feels reasonable. But the monthly payment is a magic trick. It makes the real cost disappear. And in 2026, the real cost of a new truck is something most people are completely unprepared for. Not because trucks got more expensive overnight, although they did, but because three different forces all hit at exactly the same time, and together they make the math genuinely cruel. Let's break it down. Force number one, the price. 10 years ago, you could walk into a dealership and buy a solid, full-size truck for around $30,000 to $35,000. Today, the average transaction price for a new full-size truck in the United States is pushing $60,000. Some of the popular trims, the ones with the leather seats and the big screens and the towing packages that look so good in the commercials, those are pushing $70,000, $75,000, even $80,000. Think about that. A pickup truck for the price of a starter home in some parts of the country. How did we get here? A few things happened. Trucks became status symbols instead of work tools. Manufacturers figured out that people would pay luxury prices for luxury-looking trucks, and so every year the base model got a little more stripped down and the desirable trim got a little more expensive. They pulled the pricing ladder up, rung by rung. And most buyers didn't even notice because they were only looking at the monthly payment. Force number two, the interest rate. This is where it starts to get painful. 2 or 3 years ago, car loans were sitting around 3 to 4% interest. Today, if you have decent credit, you're looking at 7, 8, maybe 9%. If your credit isn't perfect, you could be paying 10, 11, 12% or more. That doesn't sound like a huge difference, but let's do the actual math, because this is where people's eyes open up. Say you're financing $60,000 for 72 months, which is now the most common loan term because it's the only way to keep the monthly payment from looking completely insane. At 4% interest, your monthly payment is around $940. Over 6 years, you pay about $67,000 total. So interest costs you roughly $7,000. At 8% interest, your monthly payment jumps to over $1,050, and over 6 years, you pay about $75,000 total. Interest costs you $15,000. Same truck, same price, 8% versus 4% costs you an extra $8,000 just for borrowing money in a different year. But here's the part that almost nobody calculates. Force number 3, depreciation. Depreciation is the silent thief of the car world. The moment you drive a new vehicle off the lot, it loses somewhere between 15 and 25% of its value. On a $65,000 truck, that's $10,000 to $16,000 gone in the first year. Not because anything broke, not because you did anything wrong, just because it's no longer new. Over 5 years, most new trucks lose 40 to 60% of their purchase price in value. So let's stack all 3 forces together. You buy a $65,000 truck, you finance it at 8% over 6 years, you drive it, enjoy it, use it. 5 years later, you go to trade it in. Your truck is now worth, let's say, $30,000, but you've paid the bank roughly $75,000. You've also paid for insurance. Full coverage on a new truck can easily run $2,000 to $3,000 a year, so add another $10,000 to $15,000 over 5 years. Registration, maintenance, maybe some tires, throw in another $4,000 or $5,000. Over 5 years, that truck cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $65,000 out of pocket, and you have an asset worth $30,000. You effectively spent $30,000 to use a truck for 5 years. That's $500 a month just in lost wealth, before you count a single dollar of the loan payment. This is what the finance manager's calculator never shows you.
The deeper idea: how your brain works against you. Now here's the part that goes beyond math, because if this were purely a math problem, people would just look at the numbers and walk away. But they don't. Millions of people buy expensive new trucks every single year, knowing somewhere deep down that it's a stretch. Why? This is where money psychology gets really interesting. There's a concept called present bias. Your brain is wired to care far more about right now than about 5 years from now. The pleasure of sitting in a new truck today feels vivid and real. The financial pain of 5 years of payments, depreciation, and lost investment growth feels distant and abstract. So your brain doesn't weigh them equally. It gives way more weight to the feeling in the showroom than to the spreadsheet you'll never actually build. Then there's something called social comparison. Humans are tribal creatures. We've evolved to care deeply about where we stand relative to the people around us. When your neighbor gets a new truck or your coworker pulls into the parking lot with something shiny, it triggers a threat response in the ancient part of your brain. Not because you're shallow, but because for most of human history, relative status actually mattered for survival. Your brain can't tell the difference between a real threat and a truck commercial. And then there's the sneakiest one of all, the payment illusion. When you pay cash for something, you feel the loss immediately. It hurts. That pain creates friction. But when you put something on a loan, the payment is spread out and diluted. Each individual payment feels small. The connection between the purchase and the pain gets severed, and so you spend more, often much more than you ever would with cash. Studies have shown that people consistently underestimate the total cost of financed purchases by enormous margins, not because they're bad at math, but because the brain simply processes monthly payments differently than lump sums. The dealership knows all of this. Their entire sales process is designed around it. They don't tell you the price first. They ask what monthly payment you're comfortable with. They start with your emotions, the test drive, the new car smell, the feeling of power behind the wheel, before they ever get to the numbers. By the time you're sitting in the finance office, you've already made the emotional decision. The paperwork is just a formality. The opportunity cost nobody talks about. Here's the angle that really flips people's thinking. Let's say instead of buying that $65,000 truck, you kept your older paid-off vehicle for a few more years. Nothing fancy, just a reliable used truck that gets the job done. And let's say that frees up, conservatively, $700 a month that you were going to spend on truck payments and higher insurance. $700 a month invested consistently in a simple index fund at an average return of 10% annually, which is roughly the historical average of the stock market over long periods, over 10 years becomes about $140,000. Over 20 years, it becomes over $500,000. That's not a number I made up, that's just compound interest doing what it does. The same math that makes a truck loan slowly eat your wealth, that same math pointed in the other direction builds it. The truck doesn't just cost you what you pay for it, it costs you what that money could have become. That's opportunity cost, and it's the most expensive thing on the sticker that nobody ever prints. What you should do differently. Now, this video isn't saying never buy a truck. If you genuinely need a truck for your work or your life, that's a legitimate decision. A tool that earns you money or saves you real time has economic value. That's different. What this is about is buying a truck or any expensive depreciating asset based on a feeling, based on a monthly payment, based on what the person at the next stoplight is driving. So here's what actually smart looks like in 2026. First, think in total cost, not monthly payment. Before you sign anything, calculate the full number: principal, interest, insurance over the loan period, depreciation. Write it on paper. Make the number real. Second, consider used. A truck that's 2 or 3 years old has already taken the biggest depreciation hit. You get most of the same vehicle for significantly less money. The first owner absorbed the loss. You don't have to. Third, ask the opportunity cost question. Before any major purchase, ask yourself, what would this money become in 10 years if I invested it instead? That question won't always lead to the same answer, but it should always be part of the conversation you have with yourself. Fourth, separate identity from assets. This is the psychological work. Ask yourself honestly, am I buying this because I need it or because of how it makes me feel about myself, because how other people see me? There's no shame in the answer, but knowing the answer changes the decision. The truck is never really about the truck, it's about how we want to see ourselves. And the really uncomfortable truth is, the version of you that quietly builds wealth over 20 years is a lot more impressive than the version with the shiny truck and the maxed out finances. You just can't see that version at a stoplight. We started with a stoplight, a truck, a feeling. Here's where we end. Every financial decision you make is a vote for the life you're building or the life you're performing. The truck is beautiful. The truck is comfortable. The truck feels like success. But success built on payments is fragile. It looks solid from the outside and dissolves the moment the math catches up. The people quietly winning with money in 2026 are not the ones with the nicest trucks. They're the ones who looked at the math, felt the pull, and said, not yet, or not this way, or not at this price. They drove past the dealership, and they kept going. The question isn't whether you can afford the monthly payment. The question is, what are you actually paying for?